Hello once again, Monster Hobbies model car garage mechanics, and welcome to a special Halloween unboxing video. Today we've got something really cool from Jimmy Flintstone that is designed to fit onto the Ecto 1A. So without further ado, let's go down and see what's on the bench. Here in the pumpkin patch, we have the Jimmy Flintstone 1959 Cadillac conversion body for the Ecto 1A. This wonderful 1959 Cadillac Hearse by Jimmy Flintstone is an awesome conversion model kit for the AMT Ecto 1 and Ecto 1A kits, as well as the ambulance and the Surf Shark. Again, a really wonderful looking body. So the Jimmy Flintstone kits, if you've never made resin models before, are pretty much already there. You just need the donor body and drop this one on top. So you do get these Landau irons, which you would glue with crazy glue onto the sides here. Now, just in case you have never done a resin model, Jimmy has some instructions here. So I'm going to go through them just for new people to resin. So it says, working with resin and pewter kits. Cleaning. Before using, parts must be washed off with soap, alcohol to remove mold release. Now, that could either be a soap with some alcohol or possibly rubbing alcohol. 2. Warping. If a part has a slight warp or is bent, use hot, not boiling water to help you pull it back into shape. Then use cold water for it to take a set, as you would with a plastic kit. Bodywork. After cleaning, the parts may be sanded, filled, or drilled. Small imperfections or air bubbles can be filled with super glue or 5-minute epoxy. There is another trick where you can put super glue and baking soda on there, and it will do the same thing. Painting. Primer coats of automotive primer are recommended on all parts before painting. Hobby paints, enamel, and automotive lacquers work fine for finish coats because lacquer will not melt resin. Stripping paint. Some strippers may damage the resin parts. Test a small area first. You may use a lacquer thinner, easy off oven cleaner, and some brake fluid. The 3 choices, not all of them at once. Okay, a little bit of this is going over top here. Let's see. There. Gluing. Use super glue or a 5-minute epoxy. Photo etch. So if there is any photo etch parts, cut off tree with sharp scissors. Remove blue dye with fingernail polish remover. Pewter, but again we don't have any. Can be buffed with steel wool, fine grit sandpaper, polished with chrome polish. Seal polished surface with a clear coat of paint. Okay. 9. Vacuum form fit windows, trim carefully with scissors. So there aren't any in this kit, but there are in some of the other Hearse models. So a vacuum form piece would be like the window, but then it's got a little plate on the bottom. So you would cut that plate off as close to the bottom of the window as possible. 10. And Jimmy's made this really big here. Test fit all parts before painting and final assembly. Always use respirator dust mask when sanding resin parts. And then Jimmy's got a catalog here, but now he's on the internet, so check it out. Now, like I was saying, I forget which Hearse this is, so I'm going to write it on the top right here with ghost letters. Ooh. All right, so there it goes. Now, I'm going to move this out of the way and hope the ghosts and goblins don't mind. Now, Jimmy has done some really wonderful work on here, and you can see the emblems for the Cadillac Hearse right on the side. Now those Landaus would come in like this, and this spot here is designed for the Ghostbusters Cadillac fin to be glued right on, just like it is on the real Ghostbusters model. Not the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon show, but you know what I mean. Look inside, there's this nice cross with the beams of light coming out of there. Jimmy did a nice job. It's not like some of the other resins that I've seen in the past that are slush cast and it's all chunky in here. This is actually quite smooth and very close to the AMT kit body. The windows, of course, are filled with resin flash, but with the hobby knife you can cut that out, make it all nice in there. There's really no pinholes on this. Actually, none at all. Bit of static electricity here, putting everything on it. Nothing to scrape here with my number 16 hobby blade. So again, some really excellent work done by Jimmy. Now, as this uses the Ecto 1A glass, you might have to cut that glass like here and there, but keep the curved window in the back, just because you're going to lose these nice little cross things. Some of this does have to be opened up, so in the back there's those little squares, and as you know, on the frame for the Ecto 1, it's got tabs that go through those squares. But again, really nice work on here. Excellent stuff. Now for the little Landau irons, well, they're very simple. That's what they look like. I have to remove the flash out of here. Now the vacuum form windows, it would look much the same. So if you had the vacuum form windows, you would cut off the flash bit off the bottom. Basically, this is what we're looking at. So tonight, trick-or-treaters, you're in for a special one, because I'm actually going to try to build this before Halloween, when this video comes out. So I've actually got it kind of lucky here, because Friday is Halloween, so that means you're watching this now. Here's the Ghostbusters model kit right out of the box, and here's the comparison to the Jimmy Flintstone. And you can see here how much work Jimmy's put into this. He's taken off these little mounting brackets and filled in all the holes and made the roof nice and smooth. And it comes out really nice. Nice. In the actual, you know, of this kit. The production value is really nice. All right, and now if I turn it on its side, you can see the Ecto 1 has the windows in the back, whereas the Hearse, it's all blanked in. Now I can see why Jimmy Flintstone left the Landau irons off, is because it probably would have been difficult to mold those in here and be able to pop it out. Again, on the inside, you've got that nice cross in there. But see, like I was saying, for however Jimmy cast this, it's actually smoother in here, just as smooth as it is, as if this was injection molded from AMT. Another thing I noticed is that the Hearse is just a little bit shorter. So that's an interesting thing. You would assume these were the same length exactly, but I guess Jimmy has figured out some dimensions that are slightly different than the Ecto 1A Hearse. So again, that's pretty interesting. Now I am in luck because I can actually build this kit without too much remorse, because I got this from a customer in Edmonton, and I was also able to secure a few bodies which I have for sale online, www.monster-hobbies.ca, or come into the store if you like this video and want to give it a try for yourself. So with a spare Ecto 1, because I do believe the person was going to make one, but then when I bought their collection, they actually hadn't got to that stage. So I was able to secure the kit, of course. All right, let's see how these AMT parts fit into the Jimmy Flintstone conversion kit. Now, because this is a bit shorter, I did notice that the glass is a bit tight in here. But remember how I was saying that you've got that nice cross in there? Well, what we can do is take our hobby saw and cut the window here, just behind this window opening, same as on the other side, make them parallel. And then with this removed, we could actually cut the curved window in the back pretty much right in here, just like that, and just like that, where it comes to the pillar. And the curvature actually does fit quite nice, as you will see there. So with a little bit of encouragement, and I do believe once this glass is free, it will be able to curve up inside and hit the top and the bottom. And we will have to try to glue this in with a bit of crazy glue because regular model cement does not actually melt the resin. So crazy glue, again, dissimilar plastics, so that's where you use the crazy glue. Now, I'll take the glass out of the way. Nicely though, the interior fits pretty well. Now, I'm not exactly sure if I'd have to cut this out here, but if that dashboard's going to be a little too far ahead because this is a bit shorter inside. But again, you could actually, how could you do this? Because some of this stuff wouldn't exist in the Hearse either, because this is ghost busting equipment. But I do believe you could potentially, I think the best way to do this might be to cut the interior just here at its thinnest point, then sand this down a little bit, and then glue it back together. So this area here, this bulkhead, would be a little bit narrower, if you know what I mean. And then with it being narrower, I think we could get the dashboard here, move this back a little bit, and lock this side down. The undercarriage would fit in pretty nicely. Got to open up those holes there. But it should all go in to the right position. After a bit of a struggle. Oh, don't worry, it's just me. And I'm hitting everything. So this is really where it would sit. So the wheel openings match up, so that's a good sign. Yeah, I think maybe, I don't know if I need to actually try to chop the interior. Maybe it will be able to work. I'll just have to jimmy it. Haha! At any rate, oh yeah, no, I can see this back end's way out here. So we'll see how this all goes. But there is a lot of meat to be able to cut some stuff off and get the undercarriage into shape and the whole deal. So I believe in this. I think I can do it. Now the next part to test is the fin. This of course is the AMT white plastic piece. So you'd have to put some crazy glue down here and then carefully, now I got to clean up the flash on this, but you would put it into place like that, and then you can glue the plastic marker lamp off the side, the cool little upper rocket bit. But overall the fit on there is really nice. Jimmy's got it all nice and tight there. So again, really cool stuff. And it does look like this might be a little longer, but you would cut it basically to the edge of that door, unless I'm just holding it wrong. But yeah, that's basically what would be happening there, and it looks like Jimmy's done a nice job to match up the fender line and everything with that fin. The next area to test is the fit of the grille, and this is the actual Ecto 1 kit, of course. I'm just going to put this up here so you can see. Now, on this kit, the grille goes right up to the top with the headlights, and it also touches there along the side to the upper part, or the lower part, of the front fender. And it's a nice tight fit there. So now, on Jimmy's kit, now to be fair, this resin is a bit rough, so some of it will have to be sanded into the proper shape. And I do believe along the bottom of the hood here, that should also be sanded. But overall, it of course will fit tight on the top of the headlights. Yes, you can see the flash is holding this up a bit. So that's why you always got to make sure that you sand these things, because we want to build an example of a real car and not a toy. But it does look like the bottoms of the, well, the top of the fender will hit the bottom. Sorry, the top of the bumper will hit the bottom of the fender. There we go. Now I can English. So, but overall, the fit is really nice. So we'll take a look at the back bumper as well and see how that goes. So I may have a little bit of trouble fitting the bumper in this demo because, as you can see, these slots are open, and the wide one, if you look at the back of the bumper, there is a tab that sticks out, and that goes into that wide hole. So on the Jimmy Flintstone kit, these, unfortunately, for right now, are filled with flash, but if I drill this out and then use a knife to square it up, I should be able to open these. But at any rate, so we know the bumper is going to fit on the AMT kit because AMT designed it that way. Let's take a look at the Jimmy Flintstone kit. Now I'm going to have to just float this in midair again because of that issue, but it does look like it would perfectly go on there. Very much so. There's another way too. I could cut the tab right off of this and then glue that flat to the back here, and that should work as well. But I'm going to try to open it up. Overall, this should look good. The only thing that might be a little bit questionable is, does the real hearse actually have a step plate in here? I'm not too sure on that one. It might have something different to load the coffin into the back, but again, research will tell you. Now the only downside is we actually lose all this Ghostbusting stuff, but I guess that's okay. I mean, hey, can always build the Ghostbusters kit on a different model. Here's the little chrome side spear things that glue onto the outside of the fins, and you've got Baby Moon hubcaps. Now you may want to change these for something more Cadillac style, and I do believe there's a really cool wheel in the AMT 1958 Chevy kit. So I'm going to pull that off my shelf and just take a look. But I think that's the custom wheel there is Cadillac style. So here we have the chrome parts tree for AMT's 58 Chevy. And these are the custom wheels for it. These, of course, are the stock Chevy wheels. But if you take a look, I do believe those are the closest thing that you could get to something that looks like the Cadillac wheel of that era. I'm going to take a look at one of the 58 Cadillacs I have. Actually, let's go whole hog. Let's grab the Monogram 59 Caddy and compare these wheels to the Monogram Caddy. So can you see it? Here's the Cadillac rims from 59 from the Monogram kit, and here's the Chevy ones that are the custom ones. And if you look, they're very close. This one, it's got a sunken in cap in the center, and this one the cap pops out. But it's got those same kind of fins coming around the edge and everything. Cadillac one's a little more refined than the Chevy custom ones. So maybe the Chevy custom ones are sort of custom off the Cadillac, I don't know, or cheap knockoffs or something. But at any rate, I think, you know, putting these under the hearse would make it look really as close to the actual stock Cadillac as you could get for this type of thing. Now, in order to get rid of the flash out of the windows, I'm going to take my number 11 hobby knife, and I'm going to try to go for the thinnest, weakest point first. And I'm just putting my blade in and going across. I'm only going to rough out the opening as best I can, and then I'll take care of the rest of this with the hobby files. There, can crunch that out. And remember, at this stage, you're not going for perfection with the knife. You're just going to try to knock this flash out of here as best you can. And one thing to know about resin is when you do start to file it or sand it, it's going to make a lot of dust. And I mean a lot, like way more than you would expect from plastic. So, as it says in the instructions, you want to make sure you wear a mask. A paper mask is good enough. You don't really want to be breathing this. So, of course, on the other side, I've knocked out the flash of the resin. And these window openings for the no drafts is going to be kind of tricky to get a file in there. But this is basically what you're going for at this stage. A little bit of flash along the bottom, and that won't hurt, because once you get the file in there, you'll be able to get this nice and square. Here I have a fine-tooth file, and let's just see how well this can work. So if I go in there, I get that flash out. Now, yeah, you can go across the top of the doors here. Another thing to use inside here would be some 300 grade sandpaper. I try this coarser file. Okay, starting to get this down a bit. But yeah, you can see it's starting to come down. So basically, just go in, make sure you're nice and flat to the actual ledge of the door. You don't want to dip in this way. That's for sure. But you can see the fine powder that's coming off here. Again, that's why you wear your respirator. It doesn't take too long to actually get this down. See, we're getting really good in there now. I just use the fine file to bring it all into shape. And I'll just get my number 11 knife blade back here and just carefully remove that. And there, as you can see, it's now nice and clean. See, that didn't take long because resin is a very soft material. So I'll continue to clean this up and we'll get to the next steps. Here's our hearse body after I cleaned up all the windows. And now you can really see how crisp this does look. It only took maybe about an hour to clean all this up. That includes all the roughness on the bottom, up in the wheel arches, up underneath. I actually found that I didn't really need to use the file too much. I could actually scrape my knife around here and clean that up. It's actually not really scraping. I kind of cut it at a, with the knife on its side. But basically, yeah, this came out really nice looking. Got it all cleaned up. So what I'm going to do is I will try testing the chrome parts on here, but I'll go and work on the actual Ecto 1A pieces, clean all those up as well, and then get back to you. Here's all our Cadillac parts after I clean them up. And this is basically all you need for the hearse. Now, once the Ghostbuster parts are removed out of the kit, you can really see there's nothing to this. The only thing that, I don't know, there is a two-piece TV screen that goes in here, but again, that's part of the Ghostbusting equipment. Unfortunately, all this is molded in the back, so, to get this platform the way it should be for the hearse, you'd actually have to really get in here and cut all this out. But I'm not sure I'm really going to do that for this build because, well, I don't know how many people are going to really be looking in the back here. One thing that I do find really cool about just the way this one piece is, it's like the seat cushion in there, how nice it's done. All the seats, the little computer ends, and the little keyboard there. It's all pretty cool stuff. But see here, one thing that I find interesting, this giant Cadillac ambulance, or hearse actually, has the X-frame in there. And this was brought in 58, the original X-frame, and after a while they got rid of it because you could get a side impact in here and there's nothing to really stop you. Stop the car from crunching in on the passengers and the driver. So I do believe they got rid of the X-frame after a while, went back to the perimeter, or some other form of unibody. But at any rate, yeah, this is quite the interesting piece. You'll have to paint the engine in there Cadillac blue, I believe. But yeah, I'll just tape this all down, spray paint that. I'm going to try to clear off the black with some paint stripper. This is, I guess this is the old Tester's flat black. It feels like it. But anyway, there's a lot of good detail on that dash. So let's clean it up and bring it home. Here I have the two wheels, the first one being the moon hubcap that's included with the Ghostbusters kit, And then the second is that hubcap out of the AMT 58 Chevy Impala. Now, what's interesting is I've got the hubcap on the painted wheel back. Now this is just held in place. Remember to test fit your parts to make sure they fit together before gluing them. And you also want to get rid of the chrome off the back so you get the plastic to plastic contact when you put your glue on. Anyway, you'll note that there is a little bit of a ring that sticks out on the bottom here. Oops, on the bottom, and that is to match up with the ring here, and they of course fit together nicely on the Ghostbusters one. But the Impala wheel was designed for a different wheel back. So you've got two solutions here, because that little ring sticks out and won't let the cap seat down onto all the plastic. So the first thing you could try to do, it's a little bit more difficult, but take your hobby knife and go around this ring a few times until it's thin enough. So you're taking your blade in this way and going around the ring like that until you thin this thickness of that inner wall down, and then the wheel will fit in. But a simpler way is to actually sand this ring off, and then that will seat the wheel down tight. However, I noticed that with the ring in place and the Chevy hubcap, it's actually the same inner thickness as the Ghostbusters Moon hubcap. So again, you would have to, sand this off, get your paint clear, and then try to glue it end to end if you wanted to leave that ring in. Or you could, with some evergreen styrene, figure out the thickness of the ring, and then cut some discs, sand this off, glue the disc on, and then glue the wheel to the disc, and the thickness would be the same. But you'd get more of a contact surface than just maybe the thin little ring inside here, where it's going to touch the thin ring inside there. But overall, if you're going to use the Goodyear tires that are included in the kit, sorry, these ones, they've got the Goodyear on both sides, but you could also find tires in your parts box like I did with these, which have a slightly better tread pattern. In fact, more realistic looking than these big jaggedy ones of the past. So the choice is all up to you, but something like the more modern, better AMT tire would look really good on the Cadillac Hearse. But again, that choice is yours. I'll leave it up to you and your creative know-how. So here we have the undercarriage, and I've just painted this with semi-gloss black, and I realized that I actually have to fix this because it's not going to fit underneath the Jimmy Flintstone Hearse. So in order to do that, I have to determine what's going on with the wheelbase. So I'm just going to move this out of the way for a sec. Here we have the Hearse, and let's try zooming the camera back. There we go. These things are so long. Okay, so I'm putting them together end to end. And as you can see, the issue is right up here in the front. The Ecto 1 is slightly longer on the wheel openings than the Miller Meteor Hearse. And this is way back here. You can see it, pretty clear as day. If I line these up perfectly, fender edge to fender edge. Well, now you can't see it, but yeah. So what I am thinking of doing here is to cut this back portion down on the undercarriage, because the wheel arches seem to line up not too bad, even though that one is slightly back. I just wonder, maybe I've got the wrong Hearse here. Sorry, the wrong Ghostbusters for this kit. I'm just going to check something in a minute. But for right now, I am a little bit stuck. But you can see the wheel arches, they do line up. So, for example, this edge goes here and comes in behind there. And this one is here. So the issue that I'm kind of going to try to resolve Now you could do this differently, it's all up to you. Let me know in the comments section down below what you're going to do. But you can see here at the back, all this is sticking right out. And that's the difference of that fender on the other one, right? So, you can see the little tabs there. That's all going to interfere with the bumper if that's sticking out like that. So what I'm going to try to do is, remember these from your school geometry set or whatever it was? These are the compass points. They use these for maps, you know, when they're, you find out the distance between your position and the enemy bunker, you know, kind of thing, whatever. And they use these on a map, and then they measure out the distance and figure it out. So what you can do with this is we'd have to figure out that distance that the thing was sticking out, right? So we figure that out, and just as an imaginary thing, I'm going to say it's about like this. Maybe that's too generous. So sometimes I notice if I put these together, one needle sticks out a little longer than the other. So you want to use the longer one to trail the existing curve, while the other needle is going to scribe a little line underneath there. So of course we got these tabs sticking out, so you wouldn't be able to connect it, but I better not push in until I actually know. Anyway, you apply pressure, you drag it across like 2 or 3 times, and this will be your cutter, and it'll make the little edge. You do it over here a couple of times, and then over there. And then you can go in with your snippers and snip along the line that you created. Take your sandpaper, smooth this edge down, and then once you do that, you've removed that bit of plastic, or let's just call it meat. And then it would be able to fit into the back perfectly. You know, whatever that determined distance was. So it doesn't look like it would be too much. So these would go in probably about to there, something like that. But of course, always measure that for sure. Now, the one thing that I wanted to check out here is that this is the Ghostbusters Ecto 1 from Polar Lights, which is different from the Ecto 1A from AMT. Now, what I want to see is if this body in here isn't the same wheelbase as the Cadillac that we're working on. So let's compare this first. Aha! That's what it is. No, maybe not. It looks pretty much like the same wheel opening. In fact, the Ecto 1 looks even longer. Oh boy, I wonder what Jimmy used then. Or maybe he just cut it back himself. Let's see, there's the Ecto 1 underbody. Or Ecto 1A underbody versus the Ecto 1 underbody. And again, the proportions are different. I thought they would have been the same. That is really interesting. Okay, so we've got a whole bunch of different Ecto 1 things going on. Now, I wonder, let's just open this up again and find the underpan. Oh, hey, and look at the interior. Here. Look at the interior on the Ecto 1, on the actual Ecto 1. It doesn't have all that computer stuff like up in here with the monitor coming out. It's actually quite different. This is more like the ambulance and hearse floor. But at any rate, let's just check out another thing here. Well, the wheel arches match up. Okay, so slide this guy in here. It should still be sticking out the back somehow. Actually, it's not bad at all. All you'd have to do on this one is just cut the little edges off here where the screws are and blend that around to this part that's sunken in. And then that should pop, actually that would pop in. Because look, it's the same arch right there, if you notice it. So yeah, if you have one of those Polar Lights Ecto 1s, and not the Ecto 1A from AMT, I think this thing would end up fitting in there a lot better. And looking more like an actual hearse interior. Body shell does sit down quite a bit inside. Or the interior bucket, I guess, sits down quite a bit inside, so it might not be quite the same thing. Look at all the writing on the bottom of the Polar Lights one. 2002 Columbia Pictures, all rights, Cadillac, design under GM, trademarks, blah, 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 blah. All in here. Anyway. But yeah, I don't know. It might be worth converting the Polar Lights kit, if you can find one. I'm not too sure how different it would be with the Surf Shark or the ambulance that AMT, you know, turned the Ghostbusters thing into. But yeah, I don't know. It's all up to you. Yeah, this one is still longer than the Miller Cadillac, but overall, I mean, you got quite a bit to choose from with these things. Here's the back of the Ecto 1A after I cut pieces off of it in order to fit the curve better in the Miller Hearse. And this is just roughed out for right now, but you can see that I clipped a little of the frame, and it does come very close to the edge of the exhaust pipes, so be careful. The next step is to take the sanding block here and then just sand this curve a bit nicer than just being all rough and clipped. And then I should be able to paint it again, and we should be good to go. So here's the first attempt at painting the mufflers and exhaust pipes, as well as the engine and transmission. As you can see, even at my age, I'm not perfect at laying down these pipes perfectly with the paintbrush, especially the ones that are molded to the chassis pan. They're always difficult to do. But I give it my best on the first shot. And then afterwards I'll come in with some gloss black paint and just cut in where the paint's actually poured over a little bit on some of these areas and just clean it up and make it look all nice like it should. So what I've done is I've painted a white wall on this tire, and I use these two acrylic artist's paints. Now usually I don't use these on models, but for the tires this is an acrylic, so it is a bit flexible. It's not an enamel. Enamels will not dry on this weird plastic that the tire is, so you can't use your testers here. And what I did is I used my tire spinning tool and I spun this in the drill. And first I painted on the white, and of course it kind of went off the sides a little bit. But then I came in with black and I painted it so that the black cut the white a little cleaner. And now you've got this wonderful white wall. We just have to wait for it to dry. I did all four wheels, and I'll install them on the chassis, and then we'll see what they look like. Here we have our completed chassis, and what I did is I used my pinstriping brush and a little bit of gloss black paint and just went along the edges here on the mufflers and exhaust pipes where it had spilled over a little on the frame and wherever else. And I just cut that with that brush, and now you can see how crisp this looks. Also got my wheels and tires installed, and if I just bring this up to the camera, you can see those 58 Chevy custom caps on there. Now there should be red right in the center, but I haven't got there yet. What I want to do is just leave that until I've got this chassis installed, just in case I touch that area and rub the paint off. There you can see the Cadillac engine. I also put on a white oil filter in there. Again, looks pretty good just for a flat pan model. I think I've got it pretty much covered, so now I can focus more on the body. Here's the back end, and I want to open up this rectangle in here in order to get the bumper in, because the bumper is sort of promo style, and I think that the chassis will fit on there without falling through because the tab will be sticking out. And there's also two little hooks on the front of the bumper up here, once you get it installed, that'll hold that chassis into the right position. So what I did is I took my drill here, I believe this is a 1/16 bit, and I drilled little holes following the edge of that rectangle. And then what I'll do is I'll take my hobby knife and I will cut the space in between the holes out and then clean that up with a file and get it open wide enough so that it'll take that little tab on the back of the bumper. Now, I've been looking online at these Cadillac hearses and they really seem to be black for the majority. There are some old brochures that show them in different colors, like green and gold and silver and white and that sort of thing. But the majority that you see that are actual hearses that are still around are black. So that's more of the traditional color for them. Now, I've been looking at interiors and it seems like these dashboards were black on the top and then down here they'd be white, or they could also be red or whatever color. But it seems like the top is a different color from the bottom. Usually the top is darker. So I've got the dashboard here and I just painted it with a semi-gloss white. And what I'll do is I'll come in with a brush and paint over the top. The semi-gloss white is spray paint, trim clad of course. And then we've got the steering wheel here, and I glued the little shift lever and turn signal on there, and should get it all ready. Now, one thing, the Ghostbuster steering wheel has that 1970s they put leather around the wheel for an extra grip, and then they'd tie it with that plastic rope or whatever it was that went through there. My dad's 74 Buick, he had one of those on there. So basically that's what this looks like. You can see the wrapping on that steering wheel just right in here. Of course, going out of focus when I need it. Yeah, so just right in there. And the horn ring, of course, will be touched up with some Molotow chrome pen. And overall, it should look good once it's all done. So I opened up the hole in the back here using my number 11 hobby knife, and then this flat file that I inherited from my dad's tool collection. This one is pretty neat. You can see how thin it is. There's file teeth along the edge as well as on the front, top and bottom, I guess, on both edges for the teeth. So what does that look like? Well, there it is, nice and square. And how does that work with our bumper? So there we've got the flat little tab that sticks out, and that now goes perfectly in here. Now, one thing I noticed is that you have to spread these sides out a little bit. See, as you can see, the bumper, it's hitting right in here. So if I just open this up a little, now it drops into shape, or into place, I mean, not shape. And you can see how nice that Jimmy Flintstone actually got the bumper to match in here. It's pretty tight. Might have to use a little bit of crazy glue, remember, because it's dissimilar plastics. So basically make a crazy glue box in here. It might be good to use the thicker crazy glue if you can get it, just to act as a little bit of a filler. And then I think when the glue's drying, I'm going to try to apply pressure on the edges of the bumpers so that this comes as close to the body as it can. See, like right there. If I let go, it'll give a little gap. But overall, this looks really good. Now, one thing that I noticed is that if you look at real Miller Meteor Cadillacs, they have the rear bumper, the stock rear bumper going all the way across. This step plate thing is a Ghostbusters Ecto 1A feature. On the actual Ecto 1, it doesn't have this. So if you are going to use parts from the Ecto 1, the rear bumper would better match than this step plate. But I don't know, I might use, well, I'm already into it, so I'll continue to use the step plate one. There is one thing that I did read, is that if the way these cars are painted, black is the standard, and then white and gray, some of them had significant meanings in the funeral parlor business. I guess the gray was sort of like old life is going, a new one can begin, or something to that effect. But it also said that funeral parlors could paint them any way they wanted to for their specific funeral parlor. So it all depended. But I have seen this in metallic green in the brochure, and it's got gold that comes up here. on top of the door jambs, and then the fin is gold. So many different ways to paint this, but actually this part was to show the bumper. But I think it's going to go together pretty well. And opening that hole was really easy. Again, this resin, if you file it, it basically disappears. Here we have a test fit of the Miller Meteor, and you can see that I've got the front and rear bumpers installed. Now this is just a dry fit, so there's no glue. It's not glued on. But as I was saying, the bumper has these tabs sticking out here, which are meant to be screwed in. That's good old promotional style type stuff. Got to do a black wash on there. You can always watch my video on that. But here, if I pop it into place, you can see that this part of the chassis pan would be sitting on the little tab that sticks through on this end, and this end is being supported by the two tabs that are up under here and are hidden. So that puts the entire suspension in the right place. There's no interior in here, but this is just hanging up on its own merits. And I will have to glue this in place first with the crazy glue in order to get that nice and tight, and then straight along the bottom where the fender meets the chrome. But, whoops. But overall, you can see just how nice this looks. The wheels are at the right height, a little bit hiding up into the wheel wells at the top, which is appropriate. Still have to paint the red on there. But overall, this is turning out to be really nice. A nice conversion from Jimmy Flintstone. Just look at that. Look at that, look at that. There it is. Looks really good. I like it. I don't know, maybe I should leave it in this resin beige color. What do you think? Just chrome it up on the sides or whatever? No, I don't know. That would look kind of bad, wouldn't it? It needs a color, a definite color. What color would you paint it? Let me know in the comments down below. And since this is coming together so nice, it's October 16th, right at this part of the film. It's actually late at night. It's 11 o'clock at night. And I think if I do this right, I should be able to have it ready for the release date on Halloween. So I'm doing the best I can, everyone. The tricky part to this is going to be getting those Landau irons equally spaced on either side. What I might try doing is using the points. And I don't know, I'll have to get a Landau iron out and clean it up. But maybe if I go from the door edge to where this big Miller Meteor logo, or I don't know, Art Deco piece, whatever you want to call it is, emblem. And what I'm thinking is the center of the louver, because it goes like an S curve, but there's a sort of like a ball in the center, because these are supposed to fold like on the real old time roofs. They don't really fold, but you know, they look like they're supposed to fold. So I'm thinking if I can pin this, make a little hole where the center of the Landau iron goes, and line it up with the circle part, should be able to get it in and have those irons basically, you know, doing the S curve somewhere in there, I guess, wherever that center is going to be. Then I got to make sure that the bottom curve, you know, doesn't touch here and here, and the top isn't sticking out over the roof. And the big problem with the whole thing is both parts are resin. So, well, even if they weren't, they'd still need crazy glue to put them in place. And crazy glue has the crazy ability of, when you tap it on, it's ready to lock up the moment you put something else on there. Maybe even your fingerprint. So that's the whole issue with it. You've got to be faster than the crazy glue if you need to make an adjustment. Otherwise, it'll just snap up and lock, and you're done. The next thing to look at is actually the fin. And what I would suggest, since resin can take lacquer paint directly without any problems, but styrene will etch, what I would recommend here is paint the plastic fin a different color, or the same color if you want to go all black, but paint it separately on its own, and then paint the body with the black or whatever you want to use, say you were doing it in lacquer, the body in lacquer, paint this separately on its own, whatever color you choose, of course. Or if you are going to paint it all with enamel, you could glue this in place and it wouldn't affect it. You will have to cut a little piece of that fin off though, because again, Jimmy Flintstone has made this body just a bit shorter. So any place where you can do an adjustment, like right at that door line, will help you immensely. So I'm going to address the issue with the glass, and the challenge I'm having is with Jimmy's really nice cross in here, that the Ghostbusters windows won't go all the way to the back, and especially since this is a bit shorter. But what I've done is I've put a little scratch in here, and if I bring the glass down into the body, the scratch is just right in this section here, just that little bit, to give a bit of area for the glass to glue in the back, just up against that window. So now I've got scratches on both sides, and what I'll do is I'll take my hobby saw and just cut right down the scratch there, and that'll give me this whole front section as a U shape, which should fit in the car and get around that cross. So what I did here is I laid down some tape along the edge of the line and then used my Atlas Super Saw and just sawed right through both sides. So now, hopefully I can get the tape off. Here we go. Now I have to clean up the edge where I sawed off, but it should be all right. So there's that. And then this. Now this should be perfect. I hope. Well, it's not too bad, but there is a little bit of tension up here at the front window. I don't know. Should I chop this some more? No, maybe not. It's going to be interesting though. I'll have to glue it along the edge here and just hit it with a bit of crazy glue and hold it in place and hope nothing runs underneath something else. But I guess that's the way to do this. Here I've cut the rear window out, and I did the same technique as I did with the other side windows by putting tape on the edge and then sawing. But what happened here is you can see a crack right in the window, and this plastic actually flexed a little at the top and it snapped it. And it's been making this crack across the top. So be very careful on that back window. The good part is the crack is high enough up that when I put it in the body back here, if I position it like that, the crack is basically just above where the trim is on the door, and it covers it pretty nicely. Now what I'm going to try to do is find the crazy glue paste, and that actually takes a little longer to dry than regular crazy glue, but it should allow me to put some pressure on the windows and get them all aligned, and give a little bit of gel inside there instead of the liquid that's going to just dry really quickly. So that's the way I'm going to try to do this. Now the second issue, of course, is getting the interior to fit where it should be, and I think because we had to cut that little bit off the back, I do believe that if I cut this bulkhead out of here, it should fit to where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to give that a shot, see what happens. Now I was going to cut this from underneath, because if I turn it over, there's a nice little groove there for the saw to fit down. But then what I've discovered is if I do that, I'm cutting it at an angle, because this little portion here is just enough to interfere with the saw, but not make it perfect. So my other alternative here is to actually cut it from behind the seat, from the top down. I think that's my best bet. So here we go. Point of no return again. Okay, it's binding a bit. through on one end. Okay, I'll turn it around this way. Get a little more downforce. There we go. A little more force where my hand is as opposed to the front of the saw. There it is. Now we cut free. Looking good. And I can remove the bulkhead here. So it'll be like that afterwards. And hopefully that brings it up to the right location. Of course, I'm going to have to sandpaper that down a bit. Let's actually find the dash. Here we go so far. Oops. Kind of like a pickup truck now. My other idea was to, because like the Johan Heavenly Hearse, it's got curtains that go in the side windows and everything to make it look right, whereas this one does not have it. Of course, the Ghostbusters didn't have the Hearse curtains and whatnot, right? So this is supposed to be right in here with a little bit of that dashboard kind of overlap thing for the glass to fit in. The other thought was to just paint the windows, all the other windows in there black. But then with that, it hides some of the ghost busting equipment, and the fact that this is not a Hearse, you know, floor pan would save me from trying to cut the bottom off and all kinds of other goofy things. But yeah, overall, I think this would work out quite a bit. You know, just trying to get this all back together nicely. But yeah, so this is my idea, just to cut that bulkhead out of there, remove it a little bit, see what happens. Here we've got our Cadillac after I put the fins on, and I've glued it on with this super glue. This is the thick gel type. So with the thick gel, it does take longer to actually dry. So I was able to just smear a bit on where the fin goes, and then press the fin in and hold it in place. And because it was thick, it didn't squish out everywhere. And because it was thick, it also took a while to set up. So that meant that I could, you know, hold it in place and maneuver it a little before it actually locked in. But what I had to do was take the fin and just notch it out underneath this big triangle here, because it's a little bit tight and the stock fin won't fit in there. And another thing I'm going to have to do is, what I found the trick to this is to have the bumper on and then push the fin into the chrome angle. So that would help it to align, you know. But still, there are some issues. So for example, you'll see the little pod right there, but then the chrome is shifted off. So when I glue this, I'm going to have to use the crazy glue and, well, of course, and push it over a little bit while it sets up so that this fin is aligned with the chrome. And on this side, I have to push this in at the top so that it locks in at the top of the fin. Now, in case you're wondering, this is some of the candy for Halloween here and here, but the kiddies are going to get these ones, and I'm going to eat these because these are the good marshmallow gummies. Now, the only other piece I have to glue on the side are the Landau irons. I still have to clean these up. But what I found out by looking at some pictures of these types of hearses on the internet is that two things. You'll notice there's like a ball on the ends of the Landau irons, and then there's one in the center here. So actually, let's take this out of the bag for a minute. Oh, it's still sealed. Okay, anyway, so this ball in the center, you'll notice it's not dead center, it's actually lower than center. So that actually does go down below. So it would be down here and the latch would come up here on top of it and not there and going underneath. And then secondly, this makes it really easy. The top ball there lines up with the top of the triangle, just a little bit above it. And then with that, I can put that on and then move this into the position. So this will be at the top at the right position. Down here just has to be swung out a little bit, but then that'll glue into place, and that will give us the correct form and shape for those Landau irons. Now before I get too carried away, I thought I'd show you how I got the Landau irons ready to go. Now what I did is I cut them off of the bit of resin with the flash, and they were a bit thick, and on the back they were kind of, you know, bulging out sort of thing, because these are probably in a mold down this way, and then the resin was poured over the top, right? So I took and sanded them so they're really thin in here, and I noticed that one end of the Landau irons is thicker than the other. See, there's the thick end, and if I actually just turn it like that on one of them, you can see one is thinner than the other, and they do taper out because these are supposed to be like scissor blades, so they would fold together. You know what I mean? Now, I'm going to have to see which end of the thicker part goes on and which end is the thinner. But as you can see, I really shaped the ends as best I could. They are a little bit lumpy, but I don't know if, you know, much can be done to get them any better, you know, on this side from the mold. But on the back, of course, I sanded them flat as I could. And now it's just a matter of lining them up on the body and gluing them in place. So here's our hearse just before I'm going to paint it with a coat of flat black. And you can see the Landau irons are going the right way down here. They're also up above the fin, which is prototypical to the actual car. And there it is on the other side. They do look nice and thin from the top, although the thick part is here, and down here it's this one. So I don't know, I did my best to try to match it, but what can you do? Now, it should look really good in gloss or flat black. I'm going to lay that down first as a primer coat, let that dry for a few days, and then lightly sand that, and then hit it with gloss black, and that should bring it home. Now, as you can see, the hinge part here in the center is down below. On the vintage cars, this would have all been canvas, and broken here, of course, and when you fold this over this way, it would fold that canvas top and bring it down here and have it stick out the end like a Model T sort of thing. But they still kept this design, even though this was a hard top, because it became part of the aesthetic of hearses. Here's our hearse in its first coat of flat black undercoating, and it looks pretty decent. Nice to see it all in one uniform color. It looked good with the chrome underneath, but I've noticed there's some spots that look kind of like fish eyes, and a few spots where the paint just sort of ran off underneath, like under and around this Landau iron. There's a bit of the fish eyes, and part of the issue with this is the tape didn't want to stick onto this inner plastic, on the inner resin, and I had to put it on top of a paint can and just rest it there. So it has a tendency to tilt at the back. Maybe if I put the can up further, it just makes it worse. Okay, somewhere there's a balancing point. So when I paint this again, I'll look for that balancing point and try to get it, but like I say, this falls off, so it's going to be interesting to try to paint the final coat on here. Here's our Cadillac interior, and I've cut it apart as you see. I removed this much plastic out of the thing, and I do believe that is the same thickness as what those side fins are, what you had to remove from the edge and the door panel, if you know what I mean. I also cut the computer thing out of here, not really because I needed to, but because I wanted to, because it had the keyboard on here at an angle. So I'm going to reuse that section to build a computer, 80s style, and I've got the monitor as well, so that's why that's out. So I'm going to use a sheet of plastic and just cut some shapes and glue them in there just to, you know, make this a normal floor again. If I really wanted to, I could actually have cut this out right along here and then built the floor into the wall and a wall section down there, but I don't know how difficult that would have been. And then here's a flat piece of plastic, paper thin, that I glued up against where I cut, so that when I put this back into alignment, there won't be a gap behind that seat. The only thing is I'm not 100% sure if I've got this right. So I don't know, it's a little bit of hit and miss. And while I'm waiting for the body to dry, I can't really be trying to manhandle this to make it fit under there. So it's a bit of a guessing game. I'm also not too sure what to do about these areas where the previous owner painted it all flat black along the doors. If I should try to keep that, if I should try painting over it with a gloss coat instead to make it look more like leather, if I should try to paint white in here, or really what the deal is. I'll also have to look at some hearses to see how the floors are painted. And then these jump seats are more of the ambulance style, so the hearse should actually have the floor going right across and no chairs in here. But I don't know. What I did is I took my number 16 hobby blade and dragged the back, turned it upside down, dragged the edge around to cut this out. But again, there's a lot of work involved, so I really want to get this done before Halloween. I'm not sure if I will. There's also some great texture in the seats, which I would love to put a decal in there. And this should actually be flat black, and these should not. So again, it's going to be a bit of work. And the hole underneath here will have to be painted flat black in case you accidentally see it up through a wheel well or something goofy. Here we have the dashboard. And what I did is I spray painted my semi-gloss black into the lid. And I used my paintbrush and I just painted one coat of paint on here to begin with. And it went underneath all the letters in here and actually made them stand out the way they should on the real dashboard. So I think I'm going to use that trick again in the future. And then I applied 2 coats of semi-gloss black on the top, but somehow it really came out gloss black. So I don't know. But this is what I found for these Cadillac dashboards on the Volo website, and that's where they're selling the real car. So overall, this turned out nice. It got the little clock up in there too. And you can see the red needle in there. And then here's the steering wheel, which was also on the Volo car that I was looking at. The only thing is, on the Volo car, it was not wrapped, like this one is wrapped with the 1970s grippy on there. But the little handles do have the black rings in there. So once I let this dry and take them off the clips and put it together, this should make for a pretty nice, accurate looking dashboard for this year Cadillac. Before I made this grille, I was watching some YouTube videos on hearses, and I learned quite a lot from them. So one thing is, you'll notice these purple headlights in here, and then we've got the regular ones on the edges. These purple lights are much like how police have the red flashing lights and construction trucks have the yellow ones. These purple ones are to show that there is a hearse when this is going in a funeral procession. Also, inside the grille where the little squares are, on the Ghostbusters ones there's some lights that stick out, but on the real hearses these would be strobe lights in those little areas, again to flash and let people know there's a funeral procession going on. So the license plate here is from 1958, even though this is a 59 Cadillac, because in September of 58 the new cars came to the showrooms. So I found a way to still utilize the 1957 British Columbia Centennial plates on later cars by just basically putting my time period into September or November or even December of 1958. Again, you can see how nice this turned out. I used a black wash up in the grill and wiped it off. I know my friend Pete in England would try to open all this up, but I don't really have time if I'm rushing this for the deadline of Halloween. But overall, this ended up nice. Oh, and the C here is for commercial vehicle in the license plate, C41220. This is a made-up thing, but I did my research and found out that the letter C like that denoted that this was a commercial use vehicle, and of course, being a hearse, it would be. Here I've got the rear bumper, and there's a little bit of an issue because this one has a step plate for the Ghostbusters, but On the real one, this would be much like the 59 Cadillac rear bumper, going all the way across with a little area for the license plate. But here, I don't have an area for the license plate, so I might just attach it in on the grill plate, find out where the center is, and make it more legal and still have the step. Now, I didn't put the little bullets in here just yet because when I glue this to the body, I'm going to have to manipulate this up and down a little bit and push these in while I'm gluing it so it's got a nice tight fit. And I didn't want to run the risk of breaking off these little bullets off the back and losing them somewhere in that process of trying to get it together, because that would just infuriate me. But I did have to glue the red in the back, because once that's glued into the car, there's no way to get it in from behind. So that's one of those things that you have to do. And you'll notice I scraped the chrome away here. And that is so that I don't glue this onto chrome and then have it fall off later. Because even though I'm using crazy glue and it's not actually melting in, it would glue chrome and paint together and not actually glue the part to the body. So by scraping this off and scraping it off on the hearse once I get the chance, then it will have at least the bond being bonded to two different types of plastic, but still plastic to plastic. Here we have the hearse body after being sprayed with some gloss black paint, and I'm not totally happy on how this turned out. This side looks really good. It came out quite slick. But the roof has a couple of weird spots in it. Can't really pick it up, but basically the paint's sort of doing something weird. There are some runs in here, and I had a few problems with this. First off, the resin that Jimmy used was slick, and so the masking tape that I usually use to tape these cars down onto things like the spray can or whatever fits underneath, the tape just wouldn't stick to that. Secondly, out here in Alberta, we've just had an entire week of wind, being either mild or really harsh or whatever. And I'm trying to paint this in order to finish this video for Halloween. And of course, I'm painting it in the wind. And on top of that, I'm also painting in the dark because I'm coming back from Monster Hobbies at 6 o'clock every night. And right now, this getting into late fall here, or fall anyway, is that when I come home, it's pitch black. So I'm trying to paint this by the porch light, and that's just not enough. So yeah, some of these drips that are coming out of here, I'm not too sure what to do about those. I won't have time to sand this out and perfect it. So at any rate, I'll just carry on here as best I can. But you can see that it is turning out nice. It'll look good with those grills. And just being careful with this because it could still use some more drying time. But inside I'll have to paint this whole headliner with something. And then I can try the glass and I can try to see if the shortened up interior is going to fit under here. Oh yes, and one other troublesome area is right here on the hood in this zone, if you can see that. See those three little dots right there? That's actually a fish eye. There is some kind of like grease or mold release agent right in this area. And I sanded this thing, I cleaned it, I washed it with soapy water, I washed it with rubbing alcohol, and yet still there's some spots where I guess in the actual resin that the mold release agent got sucked into there, and it's forever going to leave this on the hood. Now, that's not really Jimmy Flintstone's fault or anything. It's just, that is a chemical kind of reaction thing that's affecting my paint. So what I think I'll do is, after I get this whole thing together, I'm going to just take my black paintbrush, or get black paint on my paintbrush, and just very carefully put it in that zone and hope it flattens out and fills those little holes. Here's the completed Cadillac interior, just the front portion. So I guess the cab. What I did in here is I used some of the black flocking and I painted the carpet black with regular trim-clad flat black paint, and then I sprinkled that in while it was wet. That's one way to do it. The other way is to use glue and then put it on after. but I don't know if you can actually see the fibers in there. Anyway, there's the dashboard looking all nice and sweet like it really should, with the steering wheel glued in place. And then on the seat here, I just used the trim clad, the spray semi-gloss black, and I let it flow in, and it picked up a lot of these little silver buttons, but not quite the way I wanted it to. And of course I painted the seat silver. Also used the chrome pen on the door handles down there. They were very hard to try to find because I basically painted this with the flat white and I used acrylic, and it kind of chunked up in there. I also put a piece of tape along the top so that I could peel that off and have a nice cut line right there, but down below I had to freehand it, and it's a little bumpy. But overall, I mean, I really like how I did this cab up in here for our hearse. So here we have the inside of our hearse. And what I've done is I've painted it with some acrylic gray, and then I painted that neat cross with the white paint coming out of each of the points, as well as on the cross itself, just to give it a nice little look in here and not make it look so dark. So I've glued the glass into the hearse, and it was really problematic because, like I was saying before, the roof had sunken down just in this zone right here, which of course is right on the edge of the glass. So I got it as best as I could in here, but I really had to push this in and push it this way and all kinds of things. And then I used a little bit of the jelly crazy glue up here, and that did not work at all. It pulled away and popped off pretty quick. So I used the liquid stuff, and I put a bit on this edge first and pushed it into place. And then with this here in the front, I put a bit of glue underneath there where it painted it gray. And then I finished it up over here. But the thing I hate about crazy glue is right here, I put a little dot there and there where the pillar is, because the glass was bowing inward and I just wanted to get it up against the edge tight. And of course I had my thumb way over here, and I put a little crazy glue there, just a little tiny bit, and it rolled right down here where you can see it frosted up, went under my thumb right there and made a big mark on the window. I got another little tiny dot right there on the back glass, and there's one right here, actually right there on that clear glass, and a little bit right where the wipers are, you know, so I'll paint that silver or chrome, and it'll just have a little fog just right above there. So I really hate trying to glue in any windows with crazy glue. Actually, I really hate using crazy glue at all. I know some of you guys swear by it, but again, it's uncontrollable, runs away, goes where you don't want it, fogs up, you know, makes a general nuisance of itself. So again, I'll have to figure this out. But it does look like I need a little strip of gloss black right under here, because when I put the interior in place, you can really see where I wasn't able to get with the paint. And it looks pretty bad. So again, I'll have to try to get this together. And I've also got the back piece that needs to be glued in once I'm ready for it. So just to make this Halloween deadline for this model, I actually brought it down to Monster Hobbies, and I painted on all the chrome with the Molotow chrome pen, with the exception of this one side spear here, which I use bare metal foil. But I started there and I found that my knife cutting is going in and out like this. And I found that it was actually a lot easier to freehand all the chrome on here, which is amazing actually. Jimmy Flintstone has some grooves up in here around the windows, and the chrome just rolled right into the grooves without spilling over. Although I used tape along this edge here and here on the hood, and that was just, you know, to make it so that the Molotow will go on nicer. Now I'm not using the pen and rolling it. I've actually broken open the tube of the refill, and I dip my paintbrush in there and I go along with the paintbrush But you can see how I got the door handles on here. This trim here was taped out, but it ran up in the door right there, so I'm going to just touch that over with some gloss black. Same as along the fins, I just used the edge of the brush and rolled it on. I have to put in the chrome side spears here. That'll be a little later. I got fingerprints all up in here, so I'll have to clear them off. But painted down there on the Landau irons, and turns out really nice the way that it all worked out. Now, one thing that happened is I ended up getting chrome under the tape on the insides of the hood, and I had the Q-tips down here to rub down the bare metal foil, but that's all I had. And I went to the back and I found a bottle of hand sanitizer, and I was able to use the hand sanitizer on the Q-tip to rub along the edge where it spilled. And it was able to pick it up, but it left a residue, so on the same Q-tip I used some dish soap and water, and I was able to get the residue up using the dish soap and water. So completely new technique, totally barbaric, but hey, it worked. So it appears that I got that cut correct. That is what really needed to come out of the interior, was just the distance of the fin on the back, how much it sticks out from the body. And that little clip mirrored onto the top of the back seat, as well as that filler panel. The removal of that really made the difference. And here we have our interior all painted up. This is the rear portion, of course. I added a little chrome strip along the back just to differentiate the floor from that wall there. Added in some silver seats to match our front, and then I left all these gray just so that they don't really appear to be anything once we get the actual interior glued into the hearse. This was the ghost busting equipment, but you know, what can you do? Underneath I painted it all flat black in here so that when I put it to the body, the wheel arches will not show the white plastic going through. Then for the front, I've added these two little plastic strips on here. They're fairly thick, but this will allow for the interior to glue back together and be perfectly aligned underneath. These should be thin enough that they don't interfere with anything in the body. Overall though, this looks really nice. Get it back to the proper alignment, and it should just drop straight into the interior of our hearse. Here's our interior as one big unit, all ready to go, and it looks really good. Going to be cool to see this through the windows of our hearse. Here we have our completed 1959 Miller Meteor Cadillac hearse, and you can see just how nice it all came out. Very long model kit. Here I've got our C41 220 license plate right in the dead center of that plating, and you can see that I added a little bit of chrome onto the ends of the bullet tail lamps. That's the way it's supposed to be. This is a really neat model. There are some issues here, like the bottom of the fender doesn't meet the top of the bumper, but I do believe that this thing has shrunk a little bit. Hopefully it won't shrink anymore. Now, I did get this body from somebody else, so I'm not too sure how long they had it for, but since this is the Ecto 1A, that kit came out in 1989, so maybe this resin body from Jimmy Flintstone might be a year or two after that, but I think it is the original one. There you can see the purple headlights as well. Again, looks pretty sharp. Here you can see the interior through the windows, and again, everything comes out nice and clear and looks really good. Happy Halloween and thanks for tuning in.